I'd like to share a precious childhood memory of visiting the earliest Christmas lighting display in the early to mid-1960s with my father, Dr. George Pierce, and my older brother, Jeff. We continued to visit the display when it later moved to the Alamite Park. We were all touched by the way in which the magical and enchanting display was such a living and loving memorial to Billy Foster and Art Sonny Culloden. On a dark and crisp winter's night, we could see and feel the warm glow symbolizing the spirit of the season as the display pulled into view. It lit up the winter's night and drew people from all walks of life to gather as a community of neighbors. My father explained to us the meaning of the display, and in a way, he was teaching us about the enduring love of family, of how precious we are to one another in life, and how that love transcends life and embraces loved ones who have left us.
Of our Christmas lighting display, now known as the Belleville Festival of Lights. As many know, and probably likely many more do not know, especially the younger generation, the beginnings of this Festival of Light display is one of tragedy and
If you know that the origins of the reasons for the display that came out of tragedy, this really is a sign that we can overcome. And we've overcome that and taken something that was a really negative, painful time in someone's life, and now it's a celebration of what it means. And really, that the light of those two boys that died in that accident continues to burn brightly through our Christmas light display, and we're really proud of it.
Well, they went out drove out to see their ball coach. I think it was ball coach. And coming back, they hit, I think, the only tree within a half a mile either direction. Was really bad.
Well, it was my uncle, Alvin, who was my mother's brother, who was very, very close to our family. He got the call, I don't know from whom, on Christmas Eve to say that there had been this accident that his nephew was involved with at Honeywell Corners. And my uncle went to the accident scene, and the story that he tells is that unfortunately Billy had already passed and Sonny was still alive, and my uncle held his hand and talked to him and went to the hospital in the ambulance with Sonny. My name's Annis Ross, and I am the sister of Art Sonny Culloden, who was killed on Christmas Eve 1958 in a tragic automobile accident along with Billy Foster.
Hi, my name is Tim DeVell, and Billy Foster was my father. My dad, Billy, went to BCI, as back then there wasn't as many high schools in Belleville. BCI was one of the main ones. He graduated there. While he was there, he was very big into sports. Most younger kids were. He played hockey, he played baseball, he was a catcher in ball. And it was my understanding that he had been just called up to the New York Rangers organization. He was going to go and play with the Guelph Biltmores, which is part of the Ranger organization. Back then, it's a little different than it is today. When you were getting called up, you started off with their Junior A or Junior B team, and you came up through the ranks up into the NHL. That's how they brought you up through the system back then, different than what they do today. And my understanding is Christmas Eve, they were going back to tell their coach back in Tweed the news that Billy had been called up, and unfortunately, they never made it back. They went off the road and hit the tree, and he was killed instantly, and Sonny was killed shortly after.
then my uncle contacted my oldest sister and my brother-in-law to let them know what had happened, and they didn't want to tell my mother until they could all go to our home and tell her personally what was going on. So
telephone call apparently, and I can't remember who it was, but somebody said that they'd been in an accident, and at that time there was no mention of the results of it, and that's when we got to the hospital.
my uncle apparently drove out to my sister and brother-in-law's home to bring them into town because my brother-in-law, in all of the despair and the anxiety of getting the call, backed out of the driveway, and unfortunately it was snowing that night, and he ditched the car, so he wasn't able to go any further. So my uncle came out and picked them up and brought them into town to our mother's home, and together they told my mother what had happened, and they all went to the hospital.
I run off the driveway, and my place is north of Belleville, and my wife's uncle had to come out and get us, and that's when we went into the hospital and found out the bad news, and when my wife collapsed. So Sonny was actually my brother-in-law, and it was a very tragic thing because they were very close. My wife and Sonny were pre-war children, and the other three were post-war, so they were very close and sort of knocked from pillar to post because her father was in the army and their mother was doing war work and what have you. It was a pretty horrible experience for her and me.
It was bad enough that losing the boys, but around Christmas time, and it was tough sledding. And when Brother Ron told me he could have been in the deal, brought a lump to my throat, and I have a reason to want to be a part of this because I thought I was part of the community.
And then the day he got killed was a very bad day in my life. I met Bill down Lafferty's pool room down here. And we had a game of pool, and he wanted me to go with him and Art Cloden to see Art Wright. And I said, no, I can't go. He said, come on, Don, let's go with us. I said, no. I said, I'm going to Trenton to take a girl to Mass. And he kept bugging me, and I said, nah, Bill. I says, I'll see you tomorrow. I saw him next day, but not the way I wanted. You know, I mean, I lost my best friend. And, you know, I never think about it anymore because I get sad and
I'm the youngest, quite a bit younger than I'm one of 5. And unfortunately, I'm the only one left. All my brothers and sisters have passed. I really don't have a lot of memories of Sonny. I was 6 when he passed away. I just have a few fleeting memories, I guess, of him being sort of my older brother, of course, that I really looked up to. And he was very kind and really caring towards me. He really liked to tease me a lot, and he would play with me. We played dolls together and that sort of thing, but other than that, I really don't have any more memory.
met Billy when we were about 6 years old. Don, his dad, built a house on Gordon and Earl, and we seemed to hit it off good. After we always played together, and of course walked to school together and all that stuff. Got in a few fights, and Bill, being an only boy, and I was an only child. We seemed to hit it off more. We were like brothers. I remember the one time we went to the old Bell Theater to see Lassie Come Home. Now we went to the matinee, but my parents had to come and get both of us over to the Bell Theater after 9 o'clock at night. They were worried where we were. We just liked the movie. And we're typical boys. Played baseball in the summer, hockey in the winter.
There wasn't much to do in Point Anne, a town of 500 people and 600 dogs, you know, one of those. But lots to do in Belleville, and I met a lot of these kids in Belleville, and Sonny and Billy Foster were two of that group. Leo St. Dennis, Dabber Wamsley.
I remember that Christmas because Christmas in my family was always a big deal. You know, family and friends always collected at our place, and that Christmas morning, there's a friend of the family's came in with the news that there was a bad car crash Christmas Eve. It has always stuck with me, and come to realize that it was actually Annis's brother.
Well, I'm a retired worker. I was a printer for many years, and that's where Sonny and I first crossed paths there, because he was working for the Intel, and so was I. And then he ultimately went to the Trentonian, which at that time the Mort family owned it as well. And so I have known him for a long time. We played a little bit of hockey together because we used to belong to the city league there, and had a good time. We liked each other, and everything was fine.
Whatnot. I guess he was very kind and really loved kids, and was very good to my mom, and tried to help her out as much as she could, trying to raise our family by herself. And I understand that, you know, he was very helpful to family and friends as well. I have some stories about Sonny, you know, helping them build their homes and renovate their homes, and, you know, repairs with their cars and that sort of thing. So I gather that, you know, he's a very caring and generous person. Yeah, Billy and Sonny, as I understand it, were really good friends. They met through the sports community, and they both played on a lot of teams, a lot of baseball and hockey teams together. And
I think Billy was a chip off the block of Don. He used to like to go and get his hands dirty. He'd spend a lot of time out in the barn, or out in the garage as they called it, with Don, fixing stuff. I know the two of them fixed together, a car together. It was an old Henry J car.
They also played with Bobby Hull, was a member of the hockey and baseball teams that they all participated in. I understand it that there was quite a group of them who were all very athletic and played these sports together. And the story goes that Bobby Hull missed an NHL hockey game in order to attend the boys' funerals. And a few years later, he donated a trophy in memory of Billy and Sonny to the most valuable player on the junior B team.
Community, and yes, I left when I was quite young, but spent enough time with that group of boys to know that they were well thought of, and their loss to their families was hardship.
Well, Christmas in our household was a very exciting time. We didn't have much, like most families didn't back in those days, but I just remember, you know, we would all get in our pajamas, and, you know, we would sit around the Christmas tree, and all of our immediate family would be there, and, you know, we'd be having special food, and, you know, pop. That was a big thing. We hardly ever had pop in those days, so it was a real treat to have pop on Christmas Eve. And it was just such a time of such excitement. And I always remember a Christmas morning, my mother's bedroom was on the main floor, and the rest of us kids, our bedroom was on the second floor, bedrooms were on the second floor. And I always remember very fondly that early Christmas morning, even before the rest of us were up, my mother would be at the bottom of the stairs saying, "If you kids don't get up and come downstairs and open your presents, I'm going to open them for you." And I remember we would all jump out of bed and practically fall over each other coming down the stairs to get to the Christmas tree. So we had lots of wonderful memories of family and friends coming and visiting on Christmas Day in the afternoon, and of course our special dinner, turkey dinner that we would have. It was a very joyful time for us. And after Christmas 1958, things certainly were a lot more somber in our household around Christmas time than what I remember prior to that. Well, I remember Christmas morning 1958 very vividly. Our tradition in our family was that our immediate family would spend Christmas morning together, and then in the afternoon we would be visited by lots of other family and friends. And I remember waking up Christmas morning early, all excited as a little 6-year-old would be, and coming downstairs and finding all of these people in our house. And I thought it was quite strange because usually these people wouldn't visit until the afternoon. And the whole atmosphere in our home was one of extreme sadness. People were crying, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. And my oldest sister, Evelyn, took me aside and explained to me that our brother had died in a car accident during the night, Christmas Eve. Well, being a 6-year-old, of course, I didn't really understand what it all meant or what the impact was. I just remember my mom trying to make that Christmas morning as normal as possible as she could, for me and my brothers and sisters. And I remember us sitting around the Christmas tree as we usually would, and the gifts being handed out. I remember opening up my Christmas gift from Sonny and being extremely excited because it was a mauve crinoline, and I had that on my Christmas list. And I remember my gift to Sonny lay unopened under the tree. It was a box of hankies. And I just remember when I opened up my gift from Sonny, my mother just breaking into sobs.
Yes, I was a pallbearer. Sad. Very sad.
The funerals were in Belleville, and both boys' funerals were the same day at different times of the day, and they shared some pallbearers as well. There was some common pallbearers for both.
I got to see it firsthand, and they took it very, very hard. Father particularly, he sobbed all through the visitation and the whole funeral thing. He sobbed and sobbed and sobbed. He never seemed to draw an even breath at all. And they say it was his only child, so it really got him down.
I lived on Bleecker Avenue, which is only about 3 blocks from Don and Rita's house. So, I don't know, like we used to go over and see the display over on Emily Street. And then, I don't know, after Billy was killed, Don gave it up. And he had the house decorated, actually, on the Christmas Eve that the boys were killed. And one of the things he did was completely strip all the decorations down. Don was quite, what's the word I'm looking for?
Sentimental.
Quite sentimental.
It's not the people that are directly involved in it. It's the families that are left that I grieve for, and I felt so bad for Sonny and Don and his wife Foster, and great community people, community leaders, and we found out afterwards how important their kids were to them. And I can imagine if I happened to lose a Bobby or a Blake or a Brett or a Bart, and it'd be tough to swallow. And I don't want any of us in the Belleville community to forget how lucky we are when we can go through our lifetime and bury our parents instead of having our parents bury members of their family. And,
yeah, my dad died in 1955 when I was 3 years old, and my mom was left with 5 children to raise on her own. And then Sonny died in 1958, and then a year after that, both my mother's parents died within months of each other. So she had an awful lot to deal with. And you know, I would often ask her in later years how she ever managed and how she ever coped. And she would say, well, I had 5 kids to raise. I couldn't wallow in my grief. I had to put one foot in front of the other and do the best I could. But you know, I often remember, you know, seeing my mom, especially around Christmas time. You know, she'd sit at the kitchen table with her cup of tea, and you know, in the morning when she first got up, and you could tell that, you know, she was looking off into the distance, and you know, had lots of memories and you know, lots of thoughts, and you know, she would become very emotional.
Well, to my mind, it's to make the world not in a position to forget the tragedy that happened 60 years ago, and it has all the earmarks of a lasting tragedy, and the fact that it young people who are getting ready to go into their life cycle and get cut off in no time and what have you. So it runs into people's hearts, I believe, and it just keeps going.
I think it was, I don't know that Christmas as we knew it ever really did come back. I just remember every Christmas for many, many years thereafter, we would all gather on Christmas Eve at my mom's home until she passed away, and then my sister's home after that. And you know, we would celebrate our blessings and the joys of Christmas, and you know, have our memories of Sonny. But while my mother was alive, I do remember that you know, as we were adults and had homes and families of our own, we would, you know, be visiting at our mom's home, as I mentioned, and maybe going to visit other friends and whatnot. And each of us always had to phone my mom on Christmas Eve when we arrived back home, so that she would know we were safe and sound. And until she got those calls from every single one of us, she couldn't settle down for the night either.
Don himself was like a big kid. Well, both Don and Rita were very loving. They loved the community, they loved doing stuff for other people. But Don himself was a big kid. You know, he loved to put a smile on people's face, he loved to make you laugh, and I think he would laugh right along with you. Yeah, Don joined the Royal Canadian Air Force at the age of 21. Don was based out of Mountain View Airport, which is across the bay. He was an air gunner with the 135th Squadron, which eventually moved out to Moose Bank, Saskatchewan, and then on to Pat Bay, BC. He flew, he didn't see active service, but he flew the West Coast, Vancouver down to Canada border, because they were concerned about after the bombing of Pearl Harbor that they were going to come up into Canada. Don was very handy, very ingenious for at the time. He One of the things he'd done when they lost their son, Billy, Don, I guess, became the neighborhood dad to half the kids. He was involved beforehand. He had a clown troupe beforehand. People might remember him as Bozo, the clown. And he had a clown troupe before. And then you probably have a picture of him with the Belleville McFarlands as Bozo. And he had his parade troupe, and the kids would turn around and go. And then after Billy died, he kind of opened up his barn or his workshop to the local kids. And the local kids would come there, and they would make different displays and bikes, anything that would bang, clunk, whatever. He would make bikes extra high, a unicycle. He had bathtubs on wheels, right? You name it, he would make it.
Going to see the Foster display on Emily Street, my parents would take the kids, take all of us to see this because it was so unique for the area. Belleville has never seen anything like the Foster family Christmas display with the characters and all the lighting, the lights, and the traffic. It was quite popular year after year.
How you doing? My name is Anthony Lantini. This is
Dave Carey,
and we're here to tell some stories about the Christmas display.
That and other stuff about Don Foster.
Yeah.
Sonny and that, yeah. The hockey that they went to, yes. Billy, which is his son. They had a car accident out by Plainfield on 37 Highway on a Christmas Eve. And that's how a lot of this started with Don and Reed, to do something for Billy and Sonny, and that was what he decided to do. Make like Christmas Eve for kids and have the Santa Claus come over.
He wanted to make sure that kids had a real good Christmas, good time. They got to see Santa and everything. Even in his time of his sorrows, every year, the same thing. After we got done the giving out candy and stuff, Christmas Eve, Reed and him would get together by themselves after everybody left, and they would, reminisce about Billy. Well, you're talking to two guys, but I was 4 when the accident happened.
Yeah.
He was maybe 3 or 4. So we really didn't come into it until, maybe
we got about 6, 7, got hanging around with
6 or 7,
Don
yeah.
and found out more about it.
It all started with the neighborhood. It came like his neighbors all chipped in, helped him up. And then when they got old enough and they were married off, their brothers, like my brother, 2 brothers worked with Don at one time. My oldest brother, Albert, at one time was a Santa Claus. And what they think that every year it was Don, but every year it wasn't Don. Somebody else would do it. Mira Zagoras did it one year.
What we're seeing now, that's a big add-on, which is good, Don always tried to add something new every year.
Every year there was something new.
And it's just an add-on to keep it going, and hopefully Belleville realizes there is a history behind it, what it's for, and hopefully it never loses its touch.
Anything out of paper mache. And all that stuff was designed and built by Gary Marriott during the summer to have it ready for fall and winter. But there was a lot of work there. A lot of people behind the scenes worked to ensure that everything was done right. If they didn't physically do it, they donated stuff. Don had a person who would donate so much money that year, put it in his mailbox to pay for the hydro bill.
Go ahead, that was your favorite one.
Yeah, well, the thing is with Trip Up the Ladder was Don had a star there that had red bulbs in it, and they were all candy apple red bulbs. And they were outdoor light bulbs, an ordinary outdoor light bulb. So we would have to, when one burned out, go up the ladder and change the bulb. So that came down, that was one of my assignments. Whenever a bulb went, take the bulb, and we'd have gloves on. We were climbing up an aerial ladder that pulled your aerial up. And we were going up, and you had these gloves in the park on, you had the bulb stuck in your pocket, and you're going up. You climb up there, and you're looking around, and my God, I can see the Alamite. I can see this. Never mind thinking what you're supposed to be up there. Get up there, get it done, come back down. So we go up there and put the bulb up. make sure it's running right, get back down, and you'd have Don go, that's not the same color as the rest. You gotta go back up and change your bulb because the hue was off, the color was off the bulbs.
Well, again, I was young, don't remember the specific details, but you know, my siblings and my mother certainly told me that they were so happy to hear that Don and Rita were having the display at their home on Emily Street to sort of funnel their grief in the loss of their son into something joyful. And I know that was very heartwarming for my family to know that something joyous was coming out of such a tragedy, and that the community could enjoy such a spectacular show every Christmas and look to the hope and the light that comes from such a spectacular display.
I remember as a kid going over Christmas Eve to go see Santa Claus, and I'd sit inside in the kitchen at Rita and Don's, and they had not your ordinary kitchen. They had, if you go to Wimpy's now, they had like your booth that you went in and you sat around. And another thing that was very cool when you went over there, for some reason they always had a puzzle at Christmas time, and they'd have a puzzle on their table, and there would always be a puzzle that they'd be working on at Christmas time to, right, keep their mind, I guess, at ease while other things were all going around, because Santa Claus was coming and you were so excited to see Santa Claus. And I'd be sitting in there trying to put pieces on the puzzle and whatever, and then you'd hear a clang on the roof or noise on the roof, and there would be, you know, started off small, you know, 100 kids, and then it got to be, over the years, grew very fast, be like 1,000 kids out there. And you would come to go see Santa Claus, and I can remember rushing out because I wanted to go see Santa Claus. And Santa Claus would be there, and the elves would be there, and the elves would be some of his clown troupe, which was dressed up. But I can always remember it was so happy to get my candy cane, and they used to hand out a bag of Hawkins Cheesies. And it was like, oh, Hawkins Cheesies. Me as a kid, they were the best thing going. But this is one of the last pictures of my dad. This would have been probably at Christmas time, and he is at the table, and if you can see, there is a puzzle that they're working on. So memories I have of the Foster display is I got a couple of good memories. One of the memories is Elfie in the Toadstool, and this is before the movie Elf came out. The Don had the original Elfie in his toadstool in the front yard, and I would go over and see Don before Christmas, and Don would say, "Here, watch this, watch this." And he'd have the lights off in the living room, and he'd have the curtains closed, and it was lit up enough outside that you could see little kids looking at the elf. And hats off to Don, because back then in the 60s, you don't have all the technology like you have nowadays. He had ran a Radio Shack speaker out, and he had it in the toadstool, and he would have a conversation with the kid out on the street looking at the toadstool. He'd say, "Hi, my name's Elfie." And the kid would be looking around, "Where's that coming from?" He says, "My name's Elfie, I'm in the toadstool, can you see me?" And the kids are looking around, trying to see, you know. And then finally the kid would be looking at the toadstool. And it was very ingenious how they had it, because in the toadstool, they had just a shadow of a little elf that you could see on the inside. And Don would say to the kid, "I'm a very old elf, I'm hard of hearing. You need to speak up so I can hear you." And Don would have the kid basically yelling at the top of his lungs, and Don is speaking through a microphone to the speaker in the toadstool, and he'd have a conversation with the kid. He'd find out his name, what he wanted for Christmas, right? It was priceless. As I said, he had a shop and whatever, and he would do different things. Well, the thing I thought was very amazing, as a little kid, you'd come over, and he had built the reindeer, and he had all the reindeer, and they were all moving, which I'm coming to find out was a washing machine transmission, which had all the feet moving, and they would all move in unison as if they were flying. And as a little kid, I was amazed how they got this cutter, or the standard sleigh, up on the roof with the reindeer. Now the reindeer would stick out a good 10 to 12 feet over the roof, and the legs are going right perfectly in motion. And to me, that was just amazing as a little kid. And then you'd be waiting and and they'd have a light, and the light would come on, and then Santa would be in the sleigh on the top of the roof. And I thought, how cool is that?
I guess it's just a testament to the strength of the human character. And I know that they did have a lot of support during those years from friends and neighbors in the community and whatnot who really encouraged them to sort of start to move past their grief and do something positive with it. And I think a lot of it was with the encouragement of their neighborhood community, who helped them sort of rise out of the depths of their grief and recognize that, you know, what they had started in this community was so important and you know, something to be celebrated, that I think it really helped them you know, transform.
Yeah. I think Don took his grief and he channeled it into happiness for other people. And there was nothing more he liked than seeing all the people come on Christmas Eve, right, to come see Santa Claus. And I remember there was thousands of people that would come to come see Santa. It was lined up like crazy. On Christmas Eve, after Santa had left, just Rita and Don would go into the house. They wanted to be alone with their memories.
I know Don and Rita were very civic-minded and really cared a lot about this community. And Don was an alderman for several years, and they were both very instrumental in organizing and conducting the Santa Claus parades.
Knowing the Santa Claus parades, half the floats and half of all the bikes and the clowns would all be part of his troupe that would be in there doing it. Yeah, they had an old barn that they stored all the stuff they were making. Was down by the old Doctor's Hotel or across from the railway, right? And Don lived on Emily Street, so it was just basically around the corner, so it wasn't too bad. But when they had a parade or whatever, they'd pull the stuff out, take it into a shop in the back of the house, tune it all up to make sure everything was running properly. And the other thing was Rita, she used to work at Stuart Warner, and she ended up, I'm not sure exactly when, she quit Stuart Warner, and because she was very involved with the kids, she started a costume rental. She started making costumes for the kids, and it started off just as a hobby, and it actually turned into a full-time business for her. And Don worked for the railway, and he was a fireman, and he would catch the train Belleville and would go up to Toronto, and he'd have a layover, and during his layover he would go to Honest Ed's and he would go buy material for Rita, and he'd come back with yards and yards of material, and Rita would turn around and make it into some kind of costume or something. I know once upon a time Rita had a couple of women working for her helping make costumes and sewing.
I just believe that if it wasn't for Bruce and Marjorie Nickel, we wouldn't have the display that we have today. You know, thankfully they were willing to take it over from the Fosters and lovingly keep it in good shape and keep it restored over the years.
The Nichols were a big part of keeping the display alive because Don had it going for 22 years, I think, and his health got bad and he couldn't do it anymore. And because Bruce lived around the corner as neighbors on Bleecker Street, he got involved with playing Santa Claus with Don. And I come to find out later in life there was different people that played Santa, right? Wasn't just Don. And I realized that because all of a sudden there's Santa and there's Bozo, and you're going, okay, how can this be, right? And Don was very ingenious on that to mix it up. So when you thought you had things figured out as a little kid, you didn't have a clue. Bruce Nickel was a local postman. I think everybody knows Bruce. He actually had the route to where I grew up over on Alvin Street.
You go ahead.
Okay, Marjorie Nickel, and we used to play Mr. and Mrs. Santa Claus for the Fosters, and we've learned about their son and the tragedy that happened in 1958. And we were helping them out, and through the interest that we had in the Fosters and the love from the family, we wanted to be part of it. So we asked to take over the display, and they agreed, and our part of it started in 1981. And we had the display for 11 years. We moved it to our residence on Marsh Drive, and at that time we decided to call it Santa's Village. But we still kept the memory of Billy Foster, and everyone seemed to appreciate that because it gave the story more meaning, and the meaning of Christmas is love, and it should be brought out more. And when we had it on Marsh Drive, we added a lot of things to it. We added a lot of lights, which made it a lot more visible. We added a lot of characters, and we had an awful lot of help from our neighbors, our relatives, all of our friends. Everybody wanted to be a part of it. They just enjoyed it so much.
Well, I'm Grace. I'm Bruce and Marjorie's niece. I guess my role, not so much with the outside setup, but more, just following and watching Marge create costumes over the years, and helping with that would have been, and my mom also, and that would have been more my role Christmas than the outside stuff.
And my name's David Quincy, and I'm Bruce's nephew. And I started helping Bruce back when they took over the display back in 1981. And I would go and I would help Bruce with the setup in the afternoon when the display would go out. And then I'd go over, I'd stop by a couple nights a week after I was done work, and I would help him if he needed something rewired or bulbs replaced or things moved around or snow, shoveled from someplace. And then I'd help him do that for a few hours before I went home.
The neighbors had always helped with it. I don't know the conversation, but it's hearsay. They just really encouraged him to put it out because the whole city enjoyed it, It wasn't just the neighbors, but it was well known even at that time.
See, there was a gap in there that nothing happened. And then the neighbors finally got around and got the toys and whatnot out of the barn, got things ready just to have some fun, and that's the way it started.
And I remember as a boy, going to Foster's when the display was on their front yard, and I can remember that as a small boy, and that always stuck with me. And I remember as we moving forward in time when we became involved with the display, just how much it meant to people, and people seemed to be looking for something to do Christmas Eve and something Christmassy and festive. Mm-hmm. and that combined with the memory of Billy's death, it just worked out to be a great event.
I'm trying to think of the name of the people across the street. Smith, Sheila, I'm not sure. Oh, it was more or less, I guess the weather had been pretty fair for a few days there. Don called me and asked me if I'd come over, wanted to talk to me. Okay, so I went over, and he said, I'm trying to hook up a cable up here. A clothesline cable. Oh, yeah, he said, why don't you Christmas Eve come over and run the pulley across the street.
The zip line? Yeah. Well, if I, from what I remember from what Bruce told me, was that I guess Don had approached Bruce and he wanted to have, I guess, a bit of a splash on Christmas Eve night and have Santa Claus come gliding in on this zip line from the top of the house across the street. Well, it sounds like they got the cable up and they had some sort of pulley system that Bruce could hold on to a couple handles and then slide down from the roof, but I'm not sure how well they thought that out because I think it sounded like it might have been more dangerous than fun. And
I said, well, it was staged like this. It was mild. The roof was bare. So I said, oh yeah, all right. Don't mind at all. So that night, I got dressed, stupid as ever, and I went up on the roof. And the minute I did, I knew I was in trouble because it was just one complete sheet of ice. But I was up there. What's the sense of climbing back down? I can roll down just as easy. So I waited, and Don had a megaphone or something. At least he hollered that Santa was coming. Santa was coming. And everybody, the kids were looking around. By this time, I was about halfway back on the roof, thinking, oh God, how'd I get into this? Anyway, I got up there, and Don kept yelling. I kept inching ahead on the roof. And I finally got to the Emily Street end of it. I looked at that roof and I thought, oh well, Don was hollering. So I reached over. I don't know what I had, snowball or what. I threw it at Don and got his attention to let him know that I was going down. No, he got the kids all quieted. They didn't know where I was, but that if they'd looked up, they'd have seen it. But I got over the edge and down toward the driveway. And I just let go and zoomed, right, just a sheet of ice. Don, after I landed, Don got yelling, hey, there's Santa Claus. So we had some candy and whatnot to hand out. As I say, they had an extension ladder there. The two guys, I think Bob Curry was one. I can't think of the other one. And they were there to hold the ladder and make sure that I came down all right.
Well, I always enjoyed helping, and in particular participating that night on Christmas Eve, because my parents, my sister, my wife, my friends, family, we would all gather at the house early mid-afternoon and start the process getting ready for Christmas Eve. And then we would go out and feel like we were doing something useful and worthwhile and meaningful, and we'd see hundreds, if not thousands, of people come and enjoy the event. And then after it was done, we'd gather inside, and it was like a big family festive party get-together, and so we would eat and drink and enjoy each other's company until it was time to go home.
Stories and
Well, you could be in our bedroom, and you looked out, you just opened the curtain of an inch or so, but you'd be in there, and what David had done was taken an old radio, and somehow, well, I don't know, just somehow, next thing I know, here's a little speaker about that big you could talk into, and it went out to the workshop.
Yes, so I work I do electronics for a living, and anyways, Bruce said it'd be nice if we could talk. We had some sort of intercom system set up so I could talk to the kids. So we went out and had a look at it, and I think we decided we had the speaker. We could put a speaker in the workshop, or we could, or there was a mushroom close by. So I rigged up a system where I had basically a microphone, an amplifier, and a speaker, and I had one on each end, and so we could hear what the kids were saying, and then we could respond to them with our microphone from inside one of the bedrooms. We could look out the window and they wouldn't see us, and we could speak.
Well, I think it's a wonderful thing that it's going and 60 years, and as Marjorie had indicated earlier, that it keeps going and keeps building, and people learn about it and learn the history of it. I think is important that people get that and know the people involved and why it came to be.
It just couldn't keep up with it, but we enjoyed it. And
very much.
I don't know how else to say that we got connected, other than the fact that both Marjorie and I enjoyed doing it, and we enjoyed having kids around. You could listen over the intercom, which we mentioned, and you could hear the excitement in it. Just the voice. You didn't have to know the words. All you had to do was listen, because the kids were there, and as Gracie says, they were always looking for somebody to talk to. One of the workshop, either Alfie or But I did notice, I believe, I could be wrong on this, that one shot at the workshop consists of, what was his name? The one, the CID, the kids at the Canadian school for the deaf, took the workshop and they refurbished it.
Hello, I'm Donna Thano. I'm a retired teacher from Sir James Whitney School. I did a lot of research on Santa's workshop, and I'm responsible for the restoration in 2003. I received a generous grant from the City of Belleville, from the Belleville Culture and Arts Community Fund, and we're setting up a museum here at Sir James Whitney School. This year will be put in the shop program because it was connected with woodworking classes. This is the same copy as the one downtown Belleville has. The only difference is it has a reindeer instead of the Grinch. Two groups of students painted it, and they wanted it different. I gave them a choice. Which one do you want to keep for our school and one for downtown? And they said, oh, let's give downtown the Grinch. We want to get rid of him. We added Sir James Whitney School in block letters. You can see Sir James Whitney School for the Deaf. That's our signing elf. We replaced an older elf that was on there before. The older elf was called Sir James, and he was carrying a piece of lumber that said display made by Sir James Whitney School, but he had a hearing aid on. But our students in the past went through an oppressive period where they had to use speech, and they were not permitted to sign in the schools. So they replaced it with a signing elf. Now this signing elf does, oopsie, it's going like this. I-L-Y. If you put them together, it becomes I love you.
My hat goes off to Bruce and Marjorie for taking over the display, because it's a big thing. It's a big operation. And they put a lot of time and effort and money into it, right, for keeping the display going. If it wasn't for them, the display probably wouldn't be where it is now.
After they no longer could look after it, it moved to the Belleville Professional Firefighters Association, who refurbished a few of the pieces and had it at the Tom Gavey Alamite Park.
As the Nichols got older, as everybody does, the display gets a little too much for everybody to handle. And Mary Ann Sills, I believe at that time was Parks and Rec, was very instrumental in getting the display, and she moved it to the Alamite. And it was up there for a couple of years, and I think when it needed the work on it, the firefighters took it. So there was 2 years that the display wasn't up, and I think that's the time that everything was getting refurbished. And the sad part about it was the display was behind the fence. You couldn't get in to see it, but they were worried about vandalism. So the idea was they kept the gates locked, but on Christmas Eve they opened up the gate. Santa Claus was there to see everybody, so they kept the spirit of alive and the tradition of the display going. So hats off to the firefighters for doing that.
Yes, I was mayor from 2006 to 2014, and the Christmas lighting display was in disrepair or not in great shape when we took over council. So part of our goal was to try to see if we could get the Christmas display something that we'd be proud of. It was a hard start. We started, and I think the allotment of budget was at first around $50,000, which doesn't really buy a lot of Christmas displays. So we put a hold on it for another year. We had the Foster display, which the firemen have helped us over the years keep it in repair. So we give the firemen a call, and they come back and fix part of the Foster display, and we formed a committee which we put Councillor Thompson in charge of, and from there off we started running. So the city.
Well, my first experience as a Belleville councillor and just as a citizen was remembered going up to the Alamite Ballpark and seeing the display behind the fence at the ballpark and saying to myself, now that's an odd spot to have a Christmas display of lights. And I thought, you know, we should really be doing something different. Even people have done great work, and here we have it hidden behind a fence.
When we looked at our priorities, that was one of the priorities of council to get the display up to a standard that was acceptable and a display that we were all proud of.
Yeah, I was aware that there was a history of this display that went back a long ways. I didn't know the total story of it until I got involved as the chair of the committee and got the committee together, and Peter and Annis Ross got involved, and you start to find out some of this history of it, and there's a lot of great history in this Christmas display. So that's really when I started to get involved, that I started to understand some of the history of it and the value of it for our city.
Memories, I believe it was on Marsh Drive. I remember going there on Marsh Drive, and then I believe it went from Marsh Drive. And I think I can even remember when Don Foster had the display. That was why I'd be really aging myself now. And then it was Marsh Drive, and then to the Alamite, where my own children enjoyed it.
And I believe after that it was in storage for a couple of years. And then it was Neil Ellis, who was the mayor at the time, who was very passionate about recognizing the historical significance and the tradition that this display had in our community, wanted to resurrect it. And under the leadership of Councillor Garnet Thompson, the city of Belleville was able to take this over and relocate it to the Jane Forrester Park at Myers Pier, which is a perfect location for it. There's lots of room there, it's fully accessible. People can walk, they can ride, they can bike, they can walk their dogs, and have full view of all of the lights and components. I should say that there's almost 50 pieces of the original Foster and Nickel family pieces. And then in addition to that, through the sponsorship of the City of Belleville and generous donations by individuals and companies in this community, we've been able to add almost 50 pieces as well.
Yeah, so the first year well, the first year once we got it running, there was money put into it. And I remember the first year when we went down to turn the display on, there was, as I said before, there was hundreds of people there. It was something when I looked at the CAO and said, you know, this is something that I didn't know would pay off or affect the community so much. And again, you know, Christmas is a great time of season, but it's a free display, and it's something that you can take your family, and they've expanded it now to include bands and Santa Claus and things like that. So it's just gotten bigger and bigger, and you can see that with the amount of people that I'm out of town, and there's, oh, you're from Belleville, you've got that great Christmas display. So it, you kind of smile and say, hey, I was part of that, you know, we got that up and running. And you know, to give credit to anybody, I think we should probably name the Christmas display the Garnet Thompson Christmas display, because he did. Without that, I don't think I know we wouldn't have the display we have today.
That's really what this display is all about. It's centered around the Foster display. Everything else is just a nice addition to the Foster display. But Holly Finkel, Kim Taylor was very involved. Some of the committee members, Peter Annis Ross, Heather Henderson, great committee members, did lots of it. Painting, volunteering hours down there. And, you know, then a few years ago, entertainment. We added entertainment on Friday nights. Then we added the building that's got lighting and heating in it. And then so that the entertainers, but these entertainers were down there every Friday night.
I think the favorites part still is the Foster display, as I remember that growing up, and I think the attraction of all the new features also bring more people in. But to my heart, the Foster display is something I can remember and always will.
But two major displays that we added 3 or 4 years ago was the singing trees, and people love those. The kids get down there and dance around it and take pictures. And for me, the biggest enjoyment I have was going down there at night and watching the kids, especially when we had Santa Claus and Mrs. Claus down there, kids going up and them giving them candy, telling them stories, what they wanted for Christmas. That's really what I think motivated me more than anything to do what I was able to do, along with a lot of the help from the council, from the citizens, and from the committee, and from everybody that put money into it.
Well, my husband Peter and I have very happily taken on the mantle of being Santa and Mrs. Claus at the Jane Forrester Park since the City of Belleville took that display over and relaunched it in 2012. For a couple of years after that, we started doing the Santa and Mrs., and we're down there once a week for 6 weeks leading up to Christmas.
My wife Evelyn was very elated at the fact that the city could take it over, that the magnitude of the memorial could be much broader now.
I think any time we can draw our thoughts towards something like this, and if it takes lights to do it, all the more power. And I believe I'm a great one. I love the water, and I love fire, and I also like lights. And in Chicago, when I first went there, and the kids got old enough, I used to drive them up and down the streets that I knew were going to be well lit with Christmas lights, and anything that draws your attention to something, if it takes lights, I'm all for it.
We did some traveling after that, and we were down in Prince Edward Island, and I didn't realize how much national coverage that people were really interested in this. And there was one gift store that I was in, and she came over to me and she said, "Are you Mrs. Claus from Belleville, from Santa's Village?" And I said, "Yes, I am." I was just flabbergasted that, that far away they would realize that the national coverage that we got.
So I asked my grandmother, Rita, for Don's Santa Claus suit, and unfortunately she said no. That it was already spoken for, so I was very brokenhearted, a little upset at the time. But then Reet put a big smile on my face. She says, "I can do you one better." And I go, "What's that?" She says, "I can make you your own suit." She had material there, and she made me my own Santa Claus suit. She bought me the wig, everything, and to this day, I wear the Santa Claus suit, and I always make a point to go and visit a kid, put a smile on their face, just to keep the tradition alive. Being Santa Claus, when I put on my suit that Rita made me, when you first come up to a little kid, him or her, whoever they are, they're very nervous at first of you, as Santa. They shy right back. But by the end of, we'll say within 5 minutes, they're on your lap, they're your best friend, they're telling you what they want for Christmas, right? They're very inquisitive where the reindeer are parked, right? How you got there. Something about Santa Claus. He's very magical, we will say.
Well, I'm gratified and happily surprised that they would get so involved, but we are obviously a fairly a community with feelings, as I would put it, because we get involved with stuff like that mentally.
Yes, I think that this has been 60 years, and it is still going strong and growing, and more people in our community and from elsewhere are hearing about it and are coming to enjoy this spectacular display that we have here in our city. And I think it's just such a testament to family love and how it's possible to turn such excruciating grief into something positive and into something joyful, and just the strength of the human spirit to be able to do that. And I think, you know, today people are looking to hold on to traditions and looking for stability and looking for things that, you know, bring back wonderful memories of their childhoods and whatnot, and they want to be able to share those experiences with their own families and their own friends as well. And this certainly, having lasted for 60 years and hopefully many years going forward, because there certainly is a commitment to keep it going, indicates that it is such a tribute to family love, and there is light at the end of such grief.
Christmas display has deep meaning to me. It brings family together to see lights. Everybody likes the lights, and everybody likes to come see Santa Claus, and it puts a joy in everybody's face. And I'm so happy that it survived as many years as it has. You know, I'd like to thank, you know, all the different people involved in keeping it alive. I know Don and Rita would be very happy to see the joy that it has brought. It has meaning in everybody's heart, because as an adult, you remember as a kid going and seeing the display, and you take your kids to go see the display. So it's a tradition that's come down from generation to generation to generation. And hopefully this generation or this tradition will keep going on for years to come.
Yeah, I definitely think, you know, from the Fosters to the Nichols to the Belleville Firefighters Association trying to resurrect things, to the City of Belleville, there's so many people who have had such a part to play in the last 60 years, and we're just so thankful to all of them for recognizing how important this is to our culture and tradition of our city, and stepping up to the plate and making sure it didn't get lost. From what I understand about my brother and about his personality, he would be humbled. I think he would be thrilled that out of the deaths of these two young men has come such love and such enjoyment by so many people. I think he'd be very, very happy. Just to sum this all up, there is a signboard, a historical signboard that we put up at the light display every year that captures the history of the display. And it outlines the history, and it concludes with something that is very meaningful to me. And it says,
"May all who enjoy the beauty and sentimentality of this display find peace,
contentment, and the love of family and friends this Christmas season." And I think that's well said.
One of my earliest childhood memories is visiting the Foster display on Emily Street Christmas Eve. And my mom and dad would take my sister and I to the display. Every Christmas Eve, it was a family tradition, and that was the night you wanted to go because Santa was there. And he'd be handing out candy canes, and there'd be a long lineup down the sidewalk waiting to see Santa. And at that time, there was no Quinte Mall, so you didn't see Santa at the mall. This is where we got to see him, the house on Emily Street. And I remember seeing those big red bells that they still have today, and then seeing Rudolph and his flashing red nose, and that would make me so excited, but nothing was quite like Santa's workshop. So it was the sound of those bells that just got me so excited. And despite all the new additions. There's nothing quite like that little workshop and the elves and the bells. And when I hear those little bells, I am 5 years old again. And it's incredible that there is something that can make you feel like that again. It's very special.